One of the most controversial aspects of the Nintendo Switch 2 is the game key cards that Nintendo and third parties have created in order to have a cheaper form of media when it comes to a physical, and that's in quotations, game. So essentially what a game key card is, it's a hollow shell of a game, and it's where you take that little hollow shell of a game, you insert it into your Nintendo Switch 2, it then prompts you to download the game, and that downloads to your system memory, or it downloads to your Express SD card. And people really hate that because it's not an actual real physical game that includes the data on the card. If you look at how the Nintendo Switch 1 operated, you look at how pretty much every single physical game operates with Nintendo, most of the data or all of the data is on the actual card, and that gets people plenty of cause for concern. What if the servers shut down in the future? I don't want to download it. I don't want to take up space on my hard drive. I don't want to take up space on my memory or on my SD card. It should operate like how a physical game operates, and I 100% agree with that. I'm a physical game collector myself, although the Nintendo Switch 2 is making it incredibly difficult for me not to just move over to digital because I like to play my system anywhere and I don't want to lug around cartridges everywhere, but at the same time, I still buy pretty much all of my games physical when I can. But I think that there is a solution to the game key card situation. There is a long-term and a short-term solution. But if you're more interested in the short-term solution, this, what I'm going to talk about, could end the game key card situation for the foreseeable future. But it's going to actually take people opening things up a bit and picking up a few things that do stuff differently. So a lot of the major third-party games on the Nintendo Switch 2 are game key cards. Street Fighter 6, Yakuza 0. People were so angry with Nintendo at this most recent Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase because a lot of the stuff was game key cards. Highly anticipated games like Persona 3 Reload, for example. Even the Legend of Heroes games, when it comes to some of those, people are revolting against them. There are people that like game key cards, and this is not necessarily to say that you're not allowed to like them or you're not allowed to buy them. Buy whatever you want. I don't really care. But at the end of the day, this is what I'm talking about here could completely end the game key card situation, and that is Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion. And there'll be another game that I'll talk about in just a bit, so stick around for that. But this game, in terms of a short-term solution, could be one of the key cogs in getting this whole game key card situation to evaporate more sooner than later. So what is Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion? Well, it's a follow-up to the Nintendo Switch 1 game, Daemon X Machina, and it's more of a, people talk about AA or AAA. I don't really know what the budget of the game is, but it's a significantly higher budget than they had with the Nintendo Switch 1 game, which was probably more of a AA type of game. So this game has all sorts of cool mechs, it's got a bunch of different characters, it's got full voice acting, and most importantly, it has the full game on the 64GB cartridge that Nintendo Switch 2 offers. The full game on there. A lot of the biggest AAA titles that are 30, 40, 50, 60 gigs or whatever the case is, those are all on game key cards. But this game is going to be on a 64GB cartridge, and it's a large game. Marvelous, they've been doing this with their games so far. You look at Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, that was on the 64GB cart as well, but that was a Switch 1 and Switch 2 edition game. This is actually going to be a game built specifically for the Nintendo Switch 2, high-end, looks really good, obviously PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. So if you really want to show that people want physical games, the 64GB cartridge, not with the Switch 1, Switch 2 edition, not with the first party title, not with the smaller game or from anything like that, not from a smaller title or from a port or something like that. This is a specifically built Nintendo Switch 2 game that is fully on cartridge here in the West. Now in Japan, it is a game key card, but we're talking about the Western gamers, which are the bulk of people that are complaining about game key cards. So this could absolutely end it. If this game comes out and does gangbusters, if it sells like crazy, it's topping the charts overall when it comes to NPD and people are picking it up, that is going to be a decisive blow to the game key card situation. And I think that will get a lot of other developers, especially if they have a great game like Persona 3 or maybe even Persona 4 Revival when that eventually comes out, because that's going to come to the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. They will make the decision to put it on the actual cartridge. There's a lot riding on this. If people see, or if these developers see that people are just buying games digital anyway, or just buying game key cards, or whatever it is, they're going to be less likely to care about actually having that 64GB game cartridge, because it's one thing to complain online, but it's another thing to actually support when it comes down to the games that come out and have that 64GB cartridge. Now, unfortunately, I don't think Rune Factory Guardians of Azuma did anything crazy in terms of numbers, so we can't use that. We can't use Nintendo first-party games because those are Nintendo first-party games. We've got to have a game specifically built for the Nintendo Switch 2. That's not a port, that's not an older game, that's not something else, but specifically built for the system that comes out on a cartridge and people pick it up throughout the year. And you can't wait till it's discounted down to nothing overall. You gotta pick it up, and they gotta see the support that's kind of coming through. So if you are someone who's a physical collector, if you do like RPGs, if you do like mech games, there should be no reason why Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion is not on your radar. And even if you just don't even like the game, but you don't like game key cards, you have some type of interest in this game, I highly recommend checking it out, because once again, if this game does incredibly well, along with some other things that we're going to talk about in just a bit, I think that that can really hit a decisive blow to the game key card situation and get a lot of developers to second guess and to say, okay, we're going to put our game on there, especially if they have games that are more popular than Daemon X Machina, because Daemon X Machina is not a super popular franchise. Is it a profitable one? Yeah, sure, it's profitable based off the Nintendo Switch 1 version, and then they also had PC. The game never came to Xbox or PlayStation, but this one has significantly more investment into the game. They've jumped the price up to $70, so the game is definitely up in quality overall. So if there is a lot of support for this double A type-ish franchise, or this franchise that isn't as popular as Persona or The Legend of Heroes, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Elden Ring, all of these other games that are going to be coming or coming out to the Nintendo Switch 2, that's going to show these developers from bigger companies that have more money that it's absolutely worth it. You combine the complaints online with strong sales of a double A or smaller franchise, so $1 million plus on the Nintendo Switch 2, or very good 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 for the install base that the Nintendo Switch 2 has, that is going to send a massive message in terms of it. And once again, it could be a decisive blow considering what Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion is compared to what we've gotten before that's been on cart. Like I said, we've gotten some stuff, we've gotten some things that's like, okay, Japan only, right? Fantasy Life, okay, you can import it, but that's not going to get the same type of publicity as actually having it available in the stores where you can buy from Amazon, no problem, come ship to your house, you can just go pick it up at the store. So for physical game collectors, this is definitely one of the things that you should be looking out for. Now, I kind of alluded to having some other games that could do that, and I think that there's another one when it comes to the Mortal Kombat collection. That's also a very important game. However, there's some asterisks by it because it's coming out a bit later, physical overall, and the Nintendo Switch 2 version is more expensive than the Switch 1 versions or the Xbox and PlayStation versions. So there's two different ways that this can get done, and I think that there's different ways that developers can see this. Will they go the route, if these two games do well, will they go the route of, okay, we're just going to put it on the cart like Daemon X Machina, charge our 70 or charge whatever, and then we're going to see how it does? Or are we going to charge a bit more because of that expensive cart and see how gamers react? Because that's what's happening with Mortal Kombat, and that's also an option. Look, I don't like paying $80 for games. I don't like paying high prices for them. But if they include everything on the cart, that might be worth it for a lot of people who enjoy physical games. I mean, we already saw the Nintendo Switch 1 tax, the Switch tax that happened with Switch 1 cartridges all the time. They were a bit more than Xbox and PlayStation, despite not offering the same amount of graphics or visuals. Well, because they have the cartridge. The cartridge costs more when it comes down to it compared to a cheap Blu-ray disc. So that is the price of having a cartridge format that only Nintendo really uses. It's not a standardized format. It's not something that a bunch of companies use. So if only one company uses it, it's proprietary for the most part, and it's going to cost a lot more than a Blu-ray that's been around for like 20 years or something like that and can be produced for much cheaper. So there's two different routes. There's two different ways this can go, and I'm very interested to see how Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion does when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 version, in addition to how Mortal Kombat the collection does and how they're charging a bit more for that. Is it going to do really well on the Nintendo Switch 2? Is the jump when it comes to the price, is that going to be a problem for gamers out there? I think it's going to be really interesting to see. Now, there's also another route when it comes down to this. We need to wait and see kind of what the buying habits and what's going on with the Switch 2. The more that the Nintendo Switch 2 base goes up when it comes to game sales or when it comes to the system sales itself, the better things could potentially get. I think that if you look at the article that came out the other day, there were people that were rejoicing, talking about how the people who make the cartridges for the Nintendo Switch 2, they're looking into having different sizes for the cartridges. And yes, that might help a bit, but how much cheaper is that process going to be? We don't really know at this point. So if it's not significantly cheaper, which I'm not sure if it will be, then it's not really going to matter too much to the people that don't want to pay for the cart. But I do think that as time goes on, the Nintendo Switch 2 gets more popular, and as Nintendo works with them to somehow drive down that cost, I think that that is going to be the key to see where or how more people decide to jump on when it comes to physical cartridges. But once again, the complaining, in addition to actually supporting the games that have it full on cartridge, is going to be key and vital at this point. Cyberpunk was a nice start. Port from years ago. Rune Factory, very good game as well, also on the Nintendo Switch 1. There's been some good stuff. Fantasy Life, not bad, but also once again on the Nintendo Switch 1, on other platforms. This, once again, brand new game coming out day and date with all the platforms, 100% on cartridge, more of a bigger game, AAA that's new. This is more important to me than any other game so far this early in the life of the Nintendo Switch 2 when it comes to the fight against the game keycards, or if you don't like them. This game to me is just far more important. So I think that there's a number of ways this can go. I kind of laid out 3 of them. If you look at Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion and what that game can do, just having the game, brand new title on the cartridge, you're just going to take a little bit of a hit on there compared to Xbox and PlayStation because they're all the same price. Let's see how that goes. Or Mortal Kombat Collection, where they say, hey, look, we're going to charge a little bit more. Might take a little bit time to come out, but we're going to get you that physical cartridge, 64 gigabytes. Or just as time goes on, more people pick up the system. Nintendo and the company who makes it kind of works on the fabrication process and somehow gets that cheaper. And as time goes on, as more people pick up the system, as more physical games actually sell, things just get better. Now, there's a 4th option as well, is that it just ends up people not caring and people just go digital and people just buy Nintendo first party games physical and game key cards are just game key cards, or people just adapt and get used to them overall. There could be that option, which I think a lot of people probably won't like that option, but that could absolutely happen. It kind of reminds me something similar of when back when the 360 and PS3 were out, they started introducing a way to where you can install the game on your hard drive, like the whole thing to help out with loading times and everything, which it was optional. And then all of a sudden they said, oh, well, now it's going to be mandatory because of how slow disc-based media is, and the loading times would have just been insane on the PS4 and the Xbox One. So they just made it mandatory that you install all of that. And people didn't like that at first because, wait a minute, hold up. Why should the game take up all the space? But then eventually they just got used to it and said, okay, well, whatever. It's just going to do that. And now at this point, it's just seen as a normal thing. Although that was not normal. That was not how games are supposed to operate. That's still how I don't think games are supposed to operate. That's more like a PC thing, more so than an actual real physical game, because it shouldn't take up space on your hard drive. And you shouldn't be using it as an unlock key, essentially, for it running off of a hard drive or your SSD. I think that they should have developed some type of media that makes it to where it runs faster. Like, for example, the Wii U, that media still plays off of the disc. Now, don't get me wrong, the load times can be really long on some Wii U games, but at least it wasn't mandatory to install Wii U games on the system memory if you bought it physical. So I do like the fact that the Nintendo Switch 2 is still having, when they do have a real physical game, it's still actually a real physical game, and it plays off of the cart, and it doesn't just install to your memory or something like that. So for me, that's what I would like. So that's why I'm willing to kind of ride this one out. I'm willing to support the games that are physical more so than anything, because to me, this is pretty much the only real physical in all sorts of ways that we get with the Nintendo Switch 2 cartridges, where you don't have to install it to a hard drive and to where it actually plays off of the cart. So let's see what happens with this, guys. I know that was a lot to kind of go over. We kind of discussed quite a number of different things here, but to me, this could be a decisive blow when it comes to Mortal Kombat and when it comes to Daemon X Machina Titanic Scion, because we already know that people are going to buy Nintendo first party games physical, no problem. It's about these third party companies parties, they're the ones who wanted game key cards. They're the ones who are doing it the most. So in order to change that, we've got to be able to support the games that actually come out and are on physical on the cartridge, especially the new ones that are bigger budget. So what do you guys think about what I had to say here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.